Hello, folks. Hope all is well. Welcome to Lung Transplant Nation. My name is Sasha. Today, I have a great conversation with Rachel McGrorry. At 4 years old, she was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. By the time she was 21, she had a double pneumonia. So, she had a bumpy road to get there. But what I really want to discuss with her is her journey, because she received a single lung transplant about 6 years ago. Her journey pre and post transplant. Please stay tuned and find out. And don't forget to like and subscribe so I can bring you some more conversation. Thank you and have a great day. Folks, this is Sasha from Lung Transplant Nation. Today I have a special guest, Rachel McGrorry, here with me. Okay, and we're gonna discuss her journey. She's a single lung transplant recipient about 6 years ago from New York Presbyterian, which is the hospital that I also had my transplant. So, Rachel, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Sasha. I'm doing fabulously. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. At least the weather got nicer.
It
Okay.
did.
Yes,
Little less humid.
the weather got nicer. I mean, it's funny. Like you see, yesterday. I mean, I mentioned to you yesterday. We finally did like the group that I belong to. We did a get together, but more than half of them couldn't make it because they fear, the thunderstorm. But we have a
Absolutely.
group, about eight of us, which was great. We met at in Neuroshow Park. It was awesome. But that's something
That's great.
that's something for another day. Okay, so Rachel, can you tell me a little bit about your story? Because I know you had rheumatoid arthritis, right? When
Mhm.
you were 4 years old. So
Correct.
tell me, how did that go? I know you were young, but I'm sure you had recollection from your parents. How did that go with you as you were growing up?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So I was diagnosed. Apparently, I started showing symptoms around 3 years old. Just, a swollen wrist here and there, maybe not, being as lively as I was. I was in, gymnastics. So at first, my parents kind of just, oh, well, she twisted her wrist or, hurt herself doing something active as I was only 3 years old. As it lingered on, we went through, a few different doctors from, diagnosis to diagnosis, trying to figure out what it actually was. Around 4 years old was when we actually got a positive rheumatoid factor test, which gave me the diagnosis of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So I don't remember much of the diagnosis process and all of that in the early days, being 4 years old when I was diagnosed. But I can say it was growing up with it was definitely rough. At the point that I can remember, probably like first grade, around 6 years old. I mean, I don't think that I had one joint that wasn't affected. I mean, it was waking up constantly with swollen elbows, swollen knees, your hips hurt, this hurts, a lot of stiffness in the morning. I mean, my parents used to have to wake me up probably an hour to 2 hours earlier before I had to go to school, just so that I could soak in a bath to be able to move enough to be able to go to school. So it was definitely rough when I was younger, up until probably about age 10. I was on, a litany of medications: Plaquenil, Naproxen, methotrexate, all throughout pretty much my elementary school years. We ended up shifting away to see if something else would help, because in addition to just the symptoms being there, I also like wasn't gaining weight because of, it's they're pretty heavy
It's a
duty
lot. Yeah.
medications. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we tried doing some homeopathic remedies for a little bit,
Mhm,
which seemed to help up until I kind of hit puberty. And
mhm,
then it was like everything spiraled right back. And
mhm.
you had going into high school, where I was not in like a one level school. I'm now in like a two level,
Yeah, so
bi-level,
you had to go up and down. Yep, yep, yep.
up and downstairs. I remember sitting in classes as like a freshman and like feeling my knees kind of locking. So I would have to watch the clock and kind of time, like, okay, we have like 10 minutes left of this period. So if I start moving my knees now, I should be able to stand up when the bell rings and
Wow.
like, get myself out to my next class. So it was definitely rough. But then around 14, I ended up going on Enbrel, which is an injectable medication, which literally was a wonder for me. It helped
Awesome.
me a lot. And I was literally on that for 14 years, right up until I got my transplant.
So let me ask you, so did the Ambul relieve some of your chronic pain that you had? Because from what you described, you had a lot of chronic pain. You had to
Absolutely.
basically prepare yourself every move, because that happened to me once I got sick before transplant. I was on oxygen, so I
Yep.
had to time out everything I'm doing. How long is it gonna take me? You know, even my mind could tell me, "Oh, you can do this." No, but your body wasn't. So basically, so that helped you with your chronic pain, right?
It did. It really did. I mean, we went from, again, like I had, if I can remember correctly, in high school, it was really the joints I had the most problems with were my knees and elbows. So I mean, those are two very very important joints for getting up and doing things. Um, but once I went on the Enbrel, I mean, that really, it helps your body to kind of tamp down where, for people who don't know what rheumatoid arthritis is, it's an autoimmune disease where your own body's immune system attacks your joints. So it just wreaks havoc on joints. And what we didn't really know when I was diagnosed back in the early 90s when I was 4 was that it also had a systemic component to it as well,
Yeah.
which is where we kind of think the whole transplant process ended up coming from. But the Enbrel really did help kind of tamp down all of that, inflammation that was kind of just circling through my body at that point.
Okay, wow. Okay, awesome. So once you got that, and you went through your high school, senior year and so forth and so on. So I'm assuming that was a little bit better. So from end of high school till about 21 years old, can you kind of take us back? How were you feeling? What happened up to
Yeah.
21 years old?
So honestly, I was feeling great. I went to college out of state. I was, leading what I felt to be a normal life, with the exception that, I gave myself some injections a couple times a week,
But
but
hey, you like
that was,
everybody else, like everybody else,
that's
basically.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
I was doing things. I will say, looking back, in hindsight, I was never, I was in more like theatrical. I did drama, I did chorus. So I wasn't an athlete, but there were definitely times where, like, I mean, as a kid, you're not thinking of anything systemically, anything going on, but you're like, oh, like, you run up a flight of stairs and you're out of breath and you're like, oh, it's just because, like, I'm not athletic and I just don't, so hindsight, there might have been some lung stuff going on, like, earlier than we had ever thought, but we always kind of chalked it up to, like I said, I mean, I was doing and accomplishing everything that I wanted to do. So there was nothing that kind of held me back up until, like he said, I was 21. And right around that time, I graduated college a semester early, came back home, was working and doing some like community school classes, and just thought I was feeling run down. I had a sinus infection, and it kept going and kept going and kept going until I landed in the hospital with a double pneumonia, which
Wow.
I definitely don't recommend.
Oh no, I had pneumonia before, not a double, but I had pneumonia. It's terrible. Yeah,
It's rough.
yeah.
It's rough. It is. It is. So after the pneumonia, I was in a hospital for a week and then discharged, and just kind of, I mean, everybody who looked at me in the hospital was like, yeah, your lungs don't look great now, but you had double pneumonia. So, being a 21-year-old, you should, bounce back within 6 months, 9 months, whatever it was. And so probably about that time, I'm noticing not so much even like a severe shortness of breath, but like a cough. Like, this cough just will not go away. A dry cough won't go away. So I finally was like, well, let's see the pulmonologist that I saw previously when I was in the hospital. And he did an x-ray, and to put it very plainly, was like, your lungs look awful. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So clearly we didn't bounce back like the doctors had expected.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So basically, unfortunately, you having double pneumonia kind of had an excuse in hand for them not to look further. I mean, that's just, I guess, human nature. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And by the time
Exactly.
the 6, 7 months, came around, you were getting worse and worse, unfortunately.
That's exactly it. That's it. And I mean, even thinking back, to when I was younger, I can't remember, let's say, any point where we had a, chest x-ray or anything done, because I had never, complained of shortness of breath as a kid or, anything like that. So there really at that point wasn't and I mean, with again, the double pneumonia on top of it, there was no way at that point to tell what was new and what was old, what was from the pneumonia and what potentially might have been there for a while. So after I ended up seeing the pulmonologist, after that period of time had passed, we, did the battery of tests, tested for everything from CF just in case to eventually going in for a lung biopsy, where they basically diagnosed me with pulmonary fibrosis. They couldn't obviously 100% be sure what actually caused it. I mean, I am definitely 100% sure that the pneumonia did not help, because that probably exacerbated everything. But they were assuming that it was either solely the rheumatoid or a combination of the rheumatoid and maybe some of the heavier duty drugs that I was on to combat the rheumatoid when I was younger. So I mean, basically, that was their best guess as to how I got the fibrosis.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes, there's a concoction of different things that merges, because for me, my diagnosis was idiopathic pulmonary hypertension. I'm like, what the hell? And they said, well, we don't know. I'm like, thank you. I don't know either.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But all right. So from that point on, 21, double pneumonia, your lungs are. So what was the conversation like with your doctor, with you, with your family? When did the whole transplant equation come into play?
Sure. So that was after I got the biopsy and everything. I think that was around when I was 20, just before I was 23. So that was 2011. And really, it was at that point, I was kind of holding steady. I was working, I was doing everything. Obviously, I wasn't, running any laps around the block or anything like that, but I was, I was surviving. And, so basically it went to, I followed up with my pulmonologist every, I want to say, 4 to 6 months, just to kind of, keep an eye on it. We made sure we were keeping tabs on things. Fast forward, maybe I want to say 4 years to 2015, what I thought was a normal visit with my pulmonologist. But I mean, the anxiety started to go up as far as pulmonologist visits went, because every time I went, you can't deny the statistics, right? Like you see the oxygen kind of ticking down, you see my weight kind of ticking down. So it got to a point where one day in 2015, we went in, my father was with me. I usually have somebody come with me to doctor's appointments. And we sat down and my pulmonologist was like, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Number one, I'm going to have you do a 6-minute walk because I think you need to be on oxygen. And, my 20-something-year-old brain at that point was like, oh, great. Like, now I'm going to have this thing on my face and I'm going to be like, I'm going to stick out even more than I did with, say, the rheumatoid. So I'm like, thinking in my head, like, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. And then swiftly followed that up with, and I think you need to go get evaluated for a lung transplant. And you could have dropped a pin. All of us looking at each other like, did that really just come out of his mouth?
Yeah, I know. It must have been a traumatizing experience, because I mean, mine is similar in a sense. When they start talking about oxygen, I'm like, what are you talking about oxygen? I'm like, my first instinct, and then trust me, I was way in my 40s already, so I'm like, oxygen, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, oxygen's gonna be weak. I mean, I came up with all these ideas in my head because it's defense mechanism trying to not come to grips with what's going on. So once you had that conversation with your pulmonologist and with your family, so what did it look like afterwards? I mean, did you go on oxygen right away, or did you have to wait a few months? What was the conversation like?
It was pretty immediate. I mean, we left that I'm pretty sure we left that appointment and an appointment was already scheduled at the hospital for me to do the 6-minute walk. I mean, it can't have been long. I want to say maybe a week or two, if at that. You know, I went home, told my mom, my dad was with me, my sister, my boyfriend at the time, and you know, kind of had a nice little sad weekend for myself. He cried, you know, tried to, you know, at a certain point, like you said, you're trying to process this because this for us came so out of left field that like it's not even, you're just processing what you're being told at that point. And you know, we went through it, and then I was like, I'm very much a driven and motivated person. So after I had my little, you know, emotional, you know, processing period, I was like, all right, what do I got to do? Tell me the best hospital to go to, tell me what I need to do, what do I need to get tests done. And after I got put on the oxygen, which was August 2015, he immediately referred me up to Columbia. And I want to say I probably got my first visit with them in January of 2016. And so I met Dr. Shaw as my doctor.
Yes, I know Dr.
And
Very great doctor, very
she's
lovely person.
fabulous.
Yes,
Can't say enough about her.
yeah, she's
And you know, they told it to me straight. You know, in that first visit, I remember being absolutely petrified. And but it was like, you know, it was what was the other option? I mean, and I was in my 20s, and I'm like, I'm not ready to just be like, okay, well, too bad, and just like kind of lay down. Like that's not what I was about.
Yeah, but also, but as human beings, it's like, you know, it's even though, you know, you might know, you know, you might have been sick and everything else, but it still hits you, you know, in a different way. It's
Absolutely.
because I remember it hit me differently when literally I had to have the oxygen tanks, and you know, I had to buy myself a portable. I mean, it
Yep.
took me some time to really reconcile. I mean, I hate to admit it, but like, there were times I was ashamed going in public with it. I mean, you
Absolutely.
know, I'll have the portable, I'll have it in the car because I'm driving, I don't care. But if
Right.
I go somewhere, you know, I make sure, like, okay, how many steps are there? You know, I mean, there were a lot of
Oh yeah.
calculations. It took me a while to really kind of accept it, and you know, well, as things got worse, I had no choice but to accept it.
Yeah.
I try to really get, you know, away as much as not wearing it in public because for some
Right.
reason I felt like, you know, I don't know,
Absolutely.
I was just fighting with myself. But eventually,
Totally.
like you said, once you know, once you said, okay, you know, what's the other option, you know,
Right. Right. Right.
you know, and do it. So once you got into, you know, you got into oxygen, and then, you know, and I'm sure that was a shock, you know, to your system as well.
Definitely.
With so 2016, how long were you on oxygen before they feel like, hey, you know, we might need to you know, to progress and putting you on the list? Hey, do you remember
Yeah.
when you got put on the list and what time?
Vividly, vividly.
You don't forget this.
So
Right?
I do. So I went on oxygen officially in August 2015.
Okay.
When I went to Columbia in the beginning in January 2016, we did like the battery of, and I'm sure every transplant person can tell you the battery of tests we go through, from scans to heart caths to, you know, this blood, that blood, you know, CAT scan. We get the full real deal workup. And they decided at that point I was sick, but not sick enough. So that was like, I mean, for my mind, that was almost like you said. I mean, the oxygen thing, again, being with it in public, there's a lot of mental hurdles to go through when you
Absolutely.
get on oxygen, on the list, into transplant, all of that. And that was like my second biggest mental hurdle, I feel, because I was like, okay, well, let's just do this. Like, I'm already committed. Like, this is what I'm doing. Put me on the list. Let's go. And when they were like, well, you're not quite sick enough, I was like, how much sicker do I need to
Right,
be?
exactly. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a tough thing. It is a tough thing because that happened to me as well. They're like,
Yeah,
"Well, we're sick, but we either they couldn't put me on the. Well, I mean, they could have put me on the transplant.
they could have. Right.
Yeah, but they said, but you know, you could stay there for a long time because your numbers are not, you
You're
know,
so low,
yeah,
right?
was sicker.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I was like, okay. And you know, what do? You know, you deal with the, you know, with
Right.
the rest of it, and you know, you do
Just
what
keep
you do.
just keep going on. So basically we kind of stayed, I think that was in like June of 2016. And then more towards December, I went back. I was going for like 6-month follow-ups at that point. By the time we got to December, I remember going, and I off the top of my head, I don't know which test was the defining test, but I remember sitting in there with my doctor, and she was like, well, now it's time. Like,
Oh,
you're declining, you know, at a rapid enough rate. I mean, I was one of my, I don't know whether I should be proud of it or just laugh at it, but I was called a paradox because they were like, on paper, like, we don't know how you're literally upright and sitting and talking to us. I mean, I was still, albeit at home remotely, I was working full time.
oh wow.
I was still doing that, but I mean, you know, that being said, I was definitely, like you said, I mean, it got to the point probably around that time that I was counting like the steps from my couch to the bathroom
Mm-hmm.
while I was on oxygen. Like, it was mind blowing how subtly yet quickly it kind of deteriorated to the point where, you know, you're like, oh, okay, like I can at least do some stuff. And then you're like, man, do I really need to go to the bathroom now? Or can I hold on for another hour because I don't feel
It's
like getting
incredible. No, you are 100% right, because talking to you, I'm just having PTSD
right.
from little thing. Because I remember, like, you know, it got to a point I was just dropping my kids. You know, they had played, tennis. You know, so I was just dropping them, and I was just waiting. I wasn't even taking them. They just
Yep.
go. I was in the car. I had my oxygen on, and literally, I needed to use. And there was a restroom, like literally, like right across, and
Mhm.
I parked right in front of the restroom, literally like 30 steps. And I'm making a calculation. Can I wait until I get home to?
Yes.
I'm like, it was. That's when you know, like, okay,
Yeah,
this
something's up.
this is really serious, you know? This is
Absolutely.
really
Absolutely.
serious.
So December 2016, we went, you don't have to do the whole battery of tests again, but they had to do some updates on some of the testing. I was listed January, I believe it was the 19th or 20th
Mhm,
in 2017.
mhm.
And I got a call 2.5 weeks later on
Oh,
Super Bowl Sunday.
oh my
I remember the national anthem, and I looked at my phone and I saw, you know, how they tell you to answer every phone call. And I looked at it,
sure,
and for
sure.
some reason, I was just like, no, this can no.
The game, for crying out loud.
I knew it. I knew it. So I was called in actually to be a backup for somebody because
Okay.
I have pulmonary fibrosis. I had the ability to get either a double or a single.
Wow,
So
okay.
I was called up as a backup for somebody who needed a double. They told me to, I didn't have to go in until I think they said about like 2 in the morning, they said to get there. And they told me to, you know, take a shower, eat something, and relax. And I laughed because, okay, yeah,
Am I gonna relax now? Yeah, exactly.
relax, yeah. So we got to Columbia on, I believe it was like 2 a.m. on the 6th, and waited until like 5:30, 6 o'clock on the 6th. You know, sitting in pre-op, you've got the gown on, the IV in, you're just sitting waiting. Is it a go or a no?
They
And
did all the tests, all the blood tests, they did all that on you, right?
all the everything. We first waited in a room, actually, I believe on the 9th floor, but then once it, you know, got closer to the donor time, they were, you know, they want to get you into pre-op just in case. And we sat there, and then I got a call from the coordinator on call and said, it's yours. It's go to, and I felt like it was like, you know, you're waiting forever, you're in this limbo. And the minute they say go, I felt like, you know, nurses are coming in, checking this, the anesthesiologist bringing me meds, you're doing this, you're doing, like, within 5 to 10 minutes, you're in the OR. And the next thing I knew, I was in the ICU.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, let's take a pause here because I definitely want to come back to you and then, go over once come through from
Yeah.
surgery. We'll be right back, folks, with Rachel. Thank you. Hey, folks, we are back with Rachel McGrorry. She was telling us she 2.5 weeks after being listed, she got the call as a backup. She was on the bench ready to get in the game, and they tell her, "Hey, it's your turn."
They put
So
me in.
exactly. So once you had your transplant and you woke up in the ICU, kind of give us a synopsis of what it was like, the time in the ICU, and how long, if you remember, you stayed in the ICU.
Yeah. So it was definitely, I mean, when you're coming out, you're nice and, and like, got the anesthesia going in
All
your
those
system,
drugs,
and
all those
all those
drugs.
drugs. So
So,
I mean, it's a very much a blur. I remember pieces of it, because obviously as you get closer to the time that they extubate you and take out the breathing tube, they want you to be more and more awake, so that way they can tell if you're, breathing safely on your own.
yes, yes. Mhm.
So I mean, I will say I don't want to scare people, but it's definitely not comfortable waking up with the breathing tube. That was very awkward. Um, but once I was extubated, I do have to say, I mean, I didn't have anything. I know some people who've been in the ICU. It's pretty rough. I can say I feel very fortunate that I did have some, I don't know whether you want to call them lucid dreams or hallucinations, like
Oh,
people
tons,
talking and stuff,
tons,
and you
tons,
weren't
tons,
there.
tons of hallucination. But and I'm gonna hear yours because mine will,
Yeah, exactly. But I have to say mine weren't like anything too crazy. And I believe I was only in the ICU for like 3 or so days, if I'm remembering correctly. I made it up to the ninth floor, which is the transplant ward at Columbia, fairly quickly. I want to say by the weekend. So I was really only in there for about 3 to 4 days, to my best recollection. And then when I was on the floor, I mean, I feel like I had a pretty good experience. I mean, the nurses, I have to stop to say Columbia is just like the best. It's a home away from home. I
Mhm.
always feel
Yeah,
well taken care of when I'm there, and I'm, hoping you feel the same. But
yeah.
I mean, it was a, I mean, nobody likes to be in the hospital. Let's I wanted to, as much as I wanted to be home, though, it was very comforting being in the hospital for me, because I had, nurses here, there, like somebody was looking over me 24/7 to make sure I was doing okay. So I was discharged after 10 days in the hospital.
Oh my.
So I made it
You
out
are
pretty.
blessed. You are blessed. I'm telling you, you are blessed. Because not only me, I was hospitalized since August, got transplanted October 21st,
Oh,
stayed until December 9th.
wow.
Mine was rough. I mean,
That's,
tough.
oh,
And even when I got home, they sent a nurse home
yep.
to work with me because I had ECMO done, so the ECMO kind of died
Oh, geez.
then, so my right leg wasn't functioning at all.
Yeah, yeah.
But nah, it was rough. So that is incredible. 10 days. I mean, the
10
good
days.
yours was pre-COVID as well, so it was a little easier.
It
You
was.
was like,
It was
okay.
definitely.
So when you got home, how has your life changed, affected? Give us a synopsis. We got about, 5 minutes left.
Sure.
Session. Just kind of give me an idea from when you went home, like the first few months. How was it?
Sure. I mean, I will definitely say that the first initial, I would say at minimum week, maybe even to a month. I mean, I will have to say that I feel like they prepare us so well for the physical aspects, the medication, all of that. The one thing I personally was not prepared for was how hard it was going to hit me emotionally. I mean, I've always been an anxious person, kid. Like I have anxiety, but I mean, that just kind of brought it to a whole new level. I mean, it's just, there's literally so many things to worry about. And in my mind, it was literally like every decision I was making felt like it was life or death. So that is one thing I will just tout, I'll put it in here now and probably say it a couple more times, but I highly recommend, if people are able to get into therapy of some sort, whether it's through insurance or a post-transplant support group or a mentor,
Yeah,
something.
which I'm a part of actually. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's extremely helpful. It's extremely helpful
It
and
is.
therapeutic. Yep, agree.
It is. So, I mean, it was definitely, I mean, everything felt fresh at that point. So, you're making sure you're doing the medications right, you're doing the precautions right. It definitely gets better. It becomes more routine. I mean, I remember filling my pill box, like in the beginning, looking back at my reference sheet, oh my God, I'm gonna miss a pill. And
Tons
now
of
I do
pills.
it
Yep.
while I'm watching TV. Like, it becomes rote, it becomes memory. It definitely got better. I mean, it went all the way to pre-COVID again, but I went on a honeymoon internationally. We visited my friend in Ireland internationally. I was traveling, I was doing things, I was out with friends and family. And then I will say, COVID for me, since I was transplanted pre-COVID, literally slammed me right back into week 1 post-transplant at home, where I felt like everything was a life and death decision. Everything was scary. Like, there was legitimately a part of me that was worried, like, am I ever going to safely leave my house again and be back with people? Which is
Yeah.
honestly where I jumped into therapy, and that did help a lot.
I mean, it is still serious for people like us.
Absolutely.
So even though, you hear the mask mandate been lifted up, people just,
Yeah,
feeling like it's 1999 again, but
that's it.
but for people like us, I mean, at least you're still a good, you're a good 6 year out, but still, I'm sure there are some precautions that, you do take as well, because with the COVID and God knows whatever strain,
And everything else.
yeah, we just don't know how that's going to affect us. So definitely it's something
Absolutely.
to be careful about. So let me ask you, if you remember, how long post transplant did you travel internationally? Because that's something that we discuss in our transplant group.
Yeah.
I just
So let's see, I did it was just about like a little bit before the 2-year mark that I traveled internationally. I traveled domestically probably 6 months prior to that for my sister's wedding on a plane. That was the first time I was on a plane, but international was about the 2-year mark. Again, I trust my clinic and everything. So if anybody's ever unsure, I totally would go back to your doctor, because they have their precautions, but also, as I was reminded after one time I came home, I thought I exposed myself to something. I thought I got sick, a cold or a flu or something, because I just wasn't feeling great. And I kept apologizing, and they were like, why are you apologizing? Like, we gave you, like, we understand, like, you're out in the world, you have, like, we gave you this life to live. That's the point of transplant, is to live life. Don't live life recklessly.
absolutely.
I mean, I always carry my masks with me. I always, if I walk into a store and it's a little too crowded for my liking, the mask goes on. The hand sanitizer is with me. I carry my meds. You develop a new normal, but we are given this life to live. So
Absolutely, and I'm glad you say that, because I don't want people to think that post transplant is a death sentence. No, it's not. We went through all that. We went through the struggle to live life. So it's not. Yes, our life has changed to an extent. There's a certain things that we can and cannot do, and we understand that, but that doesn't stop us from living life. So that's definitely great that you said that. I want to come back with you for one last session in closing, and we're just going to reflect on how you doing nowadays, and if you had any kind of you know issues and situations in the past couple of years, or in the past few months. So we'll be right back. Hey folks, I hope you enjoyed the first part of our conversation with Rachel McGrorry. Now she's going to talk to us about her life post transplant. And I think she has some very good insights. Please stay tuned, and don't forget to like and subscribe, for more conversations. Thank you, and have a great day.